Thanks so much. It's really an honor to be here. This is really the place for interactive documentary, and it's so exciting to see the documentary linear world and this explosion that's happening on screens around the world really coming together in this one place. So thank you so much, Casper and IDFA, for doing this. I've been asked today to speak a little bit about two kind of smaller things within the high-rise universe. It's a project that I've been working on for about 5 years. I'm a documentarian, but I consider myself media agnostic. I've never really tied myself to any specific media, although I've worked in film a lot in the last decade or so. And it's a project at the National Film Board of Canada. I don't know if you've all heard about this place. We've been around for 70+ years. We're an agency of the Government of Canada, and traditionally we've created documentaries and animation, and we've moved into the digital space in the last 5 or 6 years. High Rise is a project that I've been working on now for almost 4 years, and the idea really is to expand, like Sarah was saying, expand that notion of what a documentary can do. And over the years, this is my little flow chart that I've started adding to. These are some of the things that we've been doing in High Rise, and the two things that I'm going to talk about today are 1 Millionth Tower and history of high rise, and I'll be talking a little bit about our process of collaboration at a local level, and also our process of collaboration with the New York Times on the new project, The History of High Rise. At High Rise, we're interested in form and content, and we're interested in exploding some of those conventional traditional ways of working in documentary. So in form, we're interested in the digital, in the interactive, and the nonlinear, but we're also really interested in that relationship with the people, what I call the people formerly known as subjects. So the people that we formerly made films about, I'm more interested in making media with. And that means working collaboratively, working with different kinds of people. You know, instead of cinematographers and sound designers, we're working with high-rise residents and architects and housing advocates and people at the city level. Also an iterative process. So instead of figuring everything out at the beginning, like in a documentary film, you decide, oh, it's going to be 52 minutes, it's going to be this theme, and then you go out and find that material to fill that form. Really interested in a different way of coming to the process is as important as the product, and also really interested in the community. So today I'm just going to quickly look at these two projects. 1 Millionth Tower is a project that we did at the local level, and these are some of the people that we collaborated really closely with and co-created with. And I'll also look at the short history of High Rise, which was a New York Times collaboration, a first time ever with the NFB. So we'll talk about these two. So 1 Millionth Tower, first I'll talk a little bit about where it's located. This is a map of Toronto. We have more high-rise buildings in Toronto than any other city in North America after Manhattan, which you don't think when you first come to Toronto because all the high-rises are spread out, as you can see in this map, all over the city, in the ravines and in the suburbs, very specifically pushed out into the peripheries, very specific master plan in the 60s and 70s. And we decided to kind of I wanted to know, what is it like to live in one of those high-rises in Toronto? And we chose a site, we call it the Kipling sites on Kipling. It's right by the airport, 20 kilometers as the crow flies from downtown, from City Hall. And this is the project that I'll be talking about.
The concrete residential high-rise is the most commonly built form of the last century.
I think this space has huge potential.
We really need some place to build a community.
That's not a video, you're actually seeing the computer turning the camera in this 3D world.
We're just trying to make a photo come alive, to say like, this space is alive.
As we say that the whole world is connected now, our world around in the neighborhood will be connected.
So we had started in it's like a twin set of residential high-rises working with 6 people. This is before 1 Millionth Tower in a project called 1000th Tower with Irene, Preeti, Obi, Maggie, Jamal, and at your far right, Faith. And what we wanted to do was see the world through their eyes. And so we put cameras and created photo blogs for for the residents to show us their lives through their own eyes. And so we spent about 2 or 3 months documenting, writing stories, and we created this photo blog that we turned into this live poetry presentation that kick-started off at City Hall, 20 kilometers back downtown. A lot of the residents had never been in City Hall, even though they've lived in Toronto for 20, 25 years. That's how disconnected these areas in Toronto are, and I think you'll find that in a lot of cities around the world where the peripheries are extremely disconnected physically from the center. The center is the hub, and the peripheries are the peripheries. And this is our former mayor, not our current mayor, David Miller, opening ceremonies with about 400 people from the City of Toronto, planners, activists, bureaucrats, heads of design schools, coming to listen to the residents of these high-rises talking about what it's like to live there. And what we wanted to do in this project was to amplify the voices of the residents in the tower renewal, what to do with these 1,000-plus high-rises that are aging, falling apart, really falling into disrepair. It was a really phenomenal moment for us in Toronto in terms of seeing how our project might be this connective tissue between the residents and the rest of the city kind of dealing with these infrastructural issues. And invitations came in really quickly, and we started sort of working in this iterative process. And pretty soon we brought the architects of this really cool program called Tower Renewal, which was this idea of like rethinking how to renovate these towers. And we brought them into a charrette process at the high-rise, and this is our team walking around with the architects, choosing sites around the buildings. And then they got together and had made big, huge photographs and then put drafting paper and started imagining the space in a different way. And then we brought in animators, and animators drew brought those illustrations to life. And then we brought in, this is Mike from Helios, he's around. I don't know if he's here today, but he's going to be around, so get to know him, he's great. To kind of take our project, very simple project about reinventing the city, reinventing these empty spaces around these buildings, and kind of equating it to what's happening on the web in terms of the open source movement. How are we not just consumers of the city or the web, but how are we citizens of these places, and how do we need to start participating? And we thought it was pretty great to use open source HTML5 WebGL technology to tell this story of rebuilding our cities from the ground up. And so this is kind of the process that we ended up using, which is this kind of remix process where the documentarians are the ones sort of passing over and moving this material through different hands, and as it takes a different shape through the project. The way that we launched this project was also pretty phenomenal. We worked closely with Mozilla Foundation, massive defenders of the open source world and the democracy on the web. And we worked with them to launch 48 Hours on the front page of Wired.com. And we also co-launched at the same time at the amazing Mozilla Festival in UK. But we also did local events, and here's the residents representing the project at another high-rise complex on the other side. If you imagine that 20-kilometer line going over to the east side in a place called Scarborough, in a situation that's pretty much exactly like their place. And we were showing this reinventing of a parking lot in a parking lot with high-rises all surrounding us. It was kind of cool to see how this could be replicated around the city and around the world. The other thing that happened is during that process, we were approached by a curator who works in the subway to curate when they don't get advertisers, they have empty space. And so they asked us to reinvent the project as posters and as little silent videos. And we ended up with a 2-month campaign inside the subway. So it's kind of like reimagine the city above you while you're traveling through it. There's over 1 million people, 1 million commuters that travel through this system every day. So it's pretty cool exposure and really interesting and unexpected audience for us. And because of that, we were invited by the top morning show in the city to come on air and do a full 3-hour broadcast directly from Kipling. And this is the host, Matt Galloway, who's arguably one of the most important political figures in the city right now, talking with the residents from the very room that we created 1 millionth tower in. And because of that, basically, the Minister of Infrastructure and Transportation came on the show a week later, and she said she heard the show, just like much of the city had, and she committed to tower renewal right there on the spot with Matt Galloway. So we really went through this incredible process of just kind of going with the flow, letting people come into our process and make important and cool things happen. And now Kipling site continues with really amazing work on the ground. They've built a playground, they're doing all sorts of renovations, really, really exciting work continuing to happen there, and we're going back and doing one last stint of high-rise there. So quickly, I just want to tell you about a short history of high-rise. In the high-rise process, we were approached by the New York Times. We were approached by Jason Spingernkopf of a new section called OpDocs. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's a pretty exciting department at New York Times that brings point of view documentaries to the New York Times web pages. And he thought, maybe do one short film, high rises, New York City, might be something there. And so he invited me down to New York, and I was admiring the high rises as I was coming in. He brought me to the main building, and we started talking about what we could do. And he said, there's this place called the morgue. It's 6 to 8 million photographs that have been undigitized, and maybe you might find a story there. We were talking about the history of the high-rise. And so I had to get out of this new, very techno building over to Times Square, down 3 floors, no cellular connection, no internet, rat traps. It was really kind of a New York basement. And I ended up in what's affectionately known as the morgue, the photography archive. So that's my cart of photographs. I looked at about 5,000 photographs in my week there. And that's with the help of Jeff Roth, who is an incredible archivist, the lone archivist standing. There used to be 25 people working in this department, and now it's just Jeff. And he was an enormous help. And I started finding photos like this one. This is Eleanor Roosevelt opening the International Ladies Worker Garment Union building, Penn South, with Robert Moses. And the backs of the photographs were as fascinating as the front. So I started taking pictures of the back as well. And I started collecting them on my iPhone. There was no other way to take them home with me, so I just had to take a lot of photos. And out of one short film, I turned the project, with the help of Jason, into 3 films and an interactive framework for it. And my biggest challenge as a creative was to think about how do you condense 2,000 years of history into 8 minutes or 9 minutes. And what I came up with was just really the inspiration of a lot of the pop-up touch books that I found on the tablets. I was really interested in those. And so we kind of wanted to genre bend a little bit and take that storybook touchstock feeling and merge old media and new media. This is kind of the collaboration that happened at the Times. Very, very unusual project, just collaborating between these 2 institutions, but then also working with many departments that had never worked together before. OpDocs had never worked with the archive department, with social media desk, the interactive. Because of the work with the social media, they brought in this idea to have a call out to readers. And through their account, Twitter and Facebook, we pulled in, I think we're over 3,000 photographs now. And the 4th part of the project is entirely made from readers' photographs. In terms of high-rise, we're really interested in the relationships first. That is what makes a project. And when you get good relationships and good collaborations, that's where great projects start. And academics are a big part of the work that I do as well, so we're working with numerous academics, and that means research and ethics boards, lots of things that we don't really think about. We think as documentarians we do informed consent and ethics well. Well, we don't. We have a lot to learn from the academic world, so that's just a point about that. And just as a tribute to Peter Wintonic, who is the master of manifestos, I've written a manifesto for high-rise, and I can share with this page with you later, but this idea that the work that we do is really inspired by some key principles around, like what Ova was saying, local and global, working at the margins, making an impact with our work and always being open and sharing and learning with our team members, but also with the people that we're working with on a larger level. And just to end, we're still going strong. We've got another 1.5 years to go. And one of the big things that I'm really excited about is working with the MIT Open Documentary Lab. I'm a visiting artist there. And so the next project that I'll be doing is in deep collaboration with technologists and wonderful thinkers at MIT. So that's High Rise. Thank you so much.
Katerina, please stay with us. Katerina, please stay with us because we might have a question or two coming in on Twitter. At least I have one. It seems like you're really combining big online players with really local communities and kind of analog events. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics between those two elements?
Yeah, for us, participation and interactivity is not just something that you do with a keyboard or with user-generated material. For us, participation is about really being connected to communities and really seeing how this digital world is more and more being, we can't talk about, we have this dichotomy of the physical and the digital, but they're really one, and we need to really understand that, and that's what we're really exploring in the work that we're doing in the communities.
Yeah, and in terms of building the communities and building also an audience, how did those two dynamics affect each other?
Well, for us, it's really about finding partners and building relationships with people that are already kind of going in your direction. So it's, that was one of the key elements of the project, was finding high-rises in Toronto that would have the right chemistry, the right moment in their time to work alongside us and really make big things happen. Because when we first got to that high-rise, we would knock on doors. You could hear people, you could smell, cooking happening. They weren't opening their doors. Like, that was just not happening at all. It was a very, very disenfranchised community. But not just because of high-rise. There's other players that were there that were coming in with us, and together we created a momentum of something really important to happen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Katerina.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.